Morning. You may or may not know that a pretty damn cool wolf called 1479 died last week. Tens of thousands of visitors to Yellowstone watched her and her Junction Butte packmates near Slough Creek, where they often den and raise their pups. Many people have their own stories, and I look forward to hearing them. But I thought I'd share one of mine. So I had just come back from elk hunting where I was working on perfecting my bull elk bugle. And elk are damn cool vocalizers. They do what is called biphonation when they bugle. They produce two sounds at the same time. Now, other animals like birds can do this, and even humans with practice can do it. What elk are doing is they produce this high-pitched whistle-like sound and a low guttural sound, and together they sound like this. Now, we still don't know how they produce that whistle-like sound. It's either likely through rapid air vibrations that are bouncing off the top of their mouth, or it's being produced by their nostrils. And someday, I hope to use one of these acoustic video devices that are used to detect leaks or vibrations in machinery, and it's how they figure out how to quiet the inside of your car. And I want to use one to see if we can figure out how elk are doing that whistle-like sound. But that's for a different day. So I'd come back and I checked my text and learned that Wolf 1479 from the Junction Butte pack had been shot and killed legally just outside of the park's boundary. She was a cool wolf. She was born to 907, who was the one-eyed matriarch of the Junction Butte pack, who died last year at age 11. And the typical wolf in Yellowstone lives only about 3.5 years on average, which is roughly about what 1479 was when she died. Now, wolves outside of the park have it much harder. Few wolves who leave the park from Yellowstone live more than a year. And I was talking to a Montana FWP biologist yesterday, and wolves that they collar are typically dead within 6 months, the ones they collar in Montana. Now, the northern range wolves in Yellowstone, like 1479, live just on the border of Montana, on the northern part of the park. And you can see the map here. And they often cross outside of the park, especially to hunt elk as they migrate to different locations, and the wolves follow them just like we hunters follow elk. Montana has set up two special wolf management units called WMU 313 and 316, which have lower quotas, 6 total for both. And it's a recognition of the wolf tourism economy in this area. Wolves drive about $80 million of visitation to Yellowstone annually. And Montana's administration and legislatures and commission have recognized the importance of that economy. But that's not the story I want to tell you. One of the coolest things about wolves is that they sometimes string sounds together, especially barks mixed with other calls like howls into these short sentence-like structures. It's a very simple form of what linguists call recursion, and it's really rare in the animal world. Other social animals such as whales, certain songbirds, and primates have all been shown to do this as well. You can kind of think of it like putting two words together, like cry and baby, or cry and wolf, where combined they mean something slightly different than the individual words mean. Now, human languages take this to wild extremes. We produce sentences, paragraphs, entire books, and some claim that that ability is uniquely ours. I kind of think of it like a peacock tail. It's our show-off trait. We puff out our chests with words. But for those of us who frequent bars like I do, you'll notice it quickly. If you're listening to people or a conversation in a bar, there's often a whole lot of words, and yet not a lot being said. So wolves bark just as much as your dogs bark, but it's an alarm mechanism for wolves, and it really means that there's trouble around. It's not like your dog barking at the mailman. Wolves also howl, and it's often used to call in their pack mates. And in this video, a female wolf uses what's called a bark howl after she was chased and nearly killed by a rival pack. here's a spectrogram of that bark howl. And a spectrogram is simply a way of visualizing sound. The bark is that vertical bar you see over there on the left, and it can kind of be loosely translated as stranger danger, right? There's something here. That howl and that modulated howl on the right can be loosely translated, send backup. Howls are used often directed at their pack mates to identify the wolf howling and get the attention and bring those wolves to that wolf. So combined, these two words, so to speak, are an alarm and a call to come here. Now, what's really cool about these two-word combinations is that recent research on dogs, you may have seen these videos on YouTube, learn how to use sound buttons where they press these buttons in combinations and they create short phrases. Just go online and check out the company Fluent Pet on YouTube if you want to see some examples of these. Now, it gets cooler than that. Wolves use different types of barks based on the threat they're facing. So you can kind of think of different words that they have for barks. It's kind of like chickadees do to tell their flock mates that a sharp-shinned hawk or a pygmy owl is nearby. They'll use different D notes. They'll make them more of them or fewer of them based on the threat they're facing. Now, wolves have a bark they use with rival wolf packs, and think of it as the canine version of, hey, you want to go at it? We call it a combative bark. Then there's the bark for pack mates. It's often higher, faster, higher pitched and faster, and it kind of reminds me of kids playing football and they're barking at one another saying, over here, over here. And then there's a slightly longer duration bark that wolves often save for us or for any threat in the woods, like a grizzly bear or a non-wolf threat. So before I play them, look at this 3D spectrogram and kind of imagine what each bark might sound like. So here we go. I'm going to play them individually from combative, competitive to wolf. Okay, one more time. Now here's a video from Holly Pipple, who had a young wolf do this woof sound directed at her while she was sitting and watching it at a hillside. So there's the wolf casually sitting up on the bank. And here's this woof. So it gets even cooler than that. Certain dog breeds have been shown to use different kinds of barks too. You can take terriers or dachshunds. They're small but fearless hunters. And researchers have found that they have 4 distinct barks when hunting with people, depending upon the prey they've encountered and cornered. So they have one for boar, another bark for fox, another bark for hare, or partridge. And it might be really hard for us to distinguish them, but once you start leaning in and listening, you might start being able to hear your own dog's different types of barks. Now, in my case, it was my border collie, Huck, who used a combative bark that tipped me off to a grizzly bear that was just outside of my back door. Which leads me back to 1479 and this woof howl. Just listen to it. So unlike the bark howl from that other wolf I played for you, this is 1479 using a woof howl fired straight at people in the summer of 2024. Now, 1479 was known for her pup nurturing capabilities. She was a young wolf. Some non-breeding wolves play a special role in helping raise the pups, and she would often return to the Junction Butte Pack's den site with food for the pups. Now, in this particular example, she was stuck. On one side of her were some Yellowstone visitors watching, while her pack mates were on the other side of them where the pups were. So Yellowstone wolves live hard and fast. And like I mentioned, they live approximately only 3.5 years on average. And that was same for 1479. Her end came just beyond the park's northern boundary in September of 2025. She was shot with a gun by a bow hunter pursuing elk. Now, the story of her death goes that two hunters were sitting under a tree bugling for an elk when two wolves, a black and a gray, appeared. The gray quickly left, but 1479 didn't run. She sat and watched, and perhaps too accustomed to the tourists she encountered almost daily. I don't know. But I can't help but wonder if she let out a woof bark in that, or a woof howl in that moment. And I wonder too, if the hunters had known her story. She's the daughter of 907, potential heir to Yellowstone's most watched pack, whether they might have paused and felt the weight of the wild before them and allowed her to slip back into the hunt she too was born for. Now, this isn't my anti-wolf hunting speech, but as a hunter myself, I've always found it ironic that elk are given the grace of a bow season and a brief 3-month hunt in Montana, while wolves can be pursued with rifles for nearly half the year. And if you know anything about bow hunting, you know your odds decrease drastically when going after something like an elk. I would have been far more impressed if these hunters killed 1497 with an arrow. Now, regardless of all that, I'm thankful I got to know her. She taught me a ton about wolf communication and the language of my dogs. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not opposed to fair chase wolf hunting or trapping, but as a hunter, I am opposed to poaching. And most people don't know that 3 Yellowstone wolves were poached just outside of the park in Montana last year. Now, I'm not talking about legal hunting like these two hunters did. I'm talking about poaching. And as just one example, the president of the Montana Trappers Association illegally snared a collared Yellowstone wolf on Point of Rocks Ranch just north of the park, which doesn't run cattle, by the way, and it's owned by a wealthy individual from Maryland. Now, the incident was handed over to Park County's attorney office, and the individual was issued a warning. Now, if you want to know why only a warning, I recommend you call the county attorney at this number and ask them. Ask if their decision represents the job-creating tourism industry that funds their office. Again, I'm not opposed to fair chase hunting or trapping. I hunt. And from what I know, the hunters that killed 1497 support fair chase hunting as well. And what they did was not illegal. They just may not have known much about this amazing wolf and her habituation to humans. Now, on a more positive note, Montana has been acknowledging the important voices of their tax-paying, job-creating tourism economies around Yellowstone and Glacier National Park. Where I live in Park County, just north of Yellowstone, tourism contributes over $500 million a year to our local economy. The bulk of it being people coming to see Yellowstone National Park. Now, to put that in perspective, Park County's ag GDP, which I'm part of and support, is only $40 million a year. So money always talks in America. And if you want to support not just wolves, but all things wild, then choose to spend your dollars with wildlife-friendly tourism businesses that call this place home. A coalition of Park County businesses called Wild Livelihoods has a group of business owners who are civilly and logically advocating for knowledge-based wildlife management in our area. You can go to the link in that QR code to find businesses, over 250 of them now here, that promote and protect one of the world's last wild places. Tell the owners thank you and their staff. Spend your tourism dollars with them. And if you're a business in the area, consider joining. We're not a nonprofit. We're just a group of business owners who expect a seat at the table. So that's my story. She was what a beautiful wolf. And I just want to thank her for all that she taught me.